Hi everyone. I wasn't planning on doing another podcast today, so apologies if it's fucking garbage. I just wanted to talk a little bit about mental health issues in prison. Now, mental health support was nothing that I ever came across in prison. I don't know what it's like now. I can't see it really being anything much better. So I still suffer with, I do suffer with mental health issues. I have kind of sort of bipolar tendencies, as in some days I'm really happy, really excited about everything, and then other days, I can barely get out of bed. All I want to do is just curl up in bed and cry. And these could have, these mental health issues could have been brought on by all sorts of things. I've lived a very complicated life. It could have been exacerbated by prison. And, I talk in my diary podcast about suicidal thoughts when I had just been caught and I was in a police cell. I must admit it is something that has plagued me throughout my life. Work becomes a real issue when you're trying to, battle the fire that's in your head. Just yesterday, I had a down day. So that meant that I was feeling just really inside myself, inside my own head. I just, by 10, 11 o'clock, in the morning at work, I just wanted to go home and go to bed and cry. There was no real explanation for it, I'd smoked some weed in the morning, but that's not unusual. I smoke weed every day. And I know people can say that this is, that it doesn't help your mental health, but, my mental health has been up and down since I was a teenager. I don't think, and I haven't smoked weed all of that time. So, smoking weed at the moment for me is, it's a real leveler. So it kind of brings me back to being a much nicer person, I feel like, than I would be when I'm not smoking weed. So going back to yesterday, so I just felt like I just felt really down all day, and it wasn't until sort of in the evening later on that day that I managed to kind of pick myself up again, and just kind of feel back myself. And I don't get to pick and choose those days. So with it being a Monday and things, I work in a sales role. I'm supposed to be active and lively, and I just couldn't do it. So I know from previous roles, sales jobs aren't great for just taking, random days off here and there. So I have to turn up. And my discipline has kind of taught me, to kind of just go with it and just try and build from some sort of foundation of the day. Just basically turn up and do what I have to do and then go. I know that when I'm having a bad day that I can be quite destructive. So that can mean I can be inflammatory towards people. I can be very sarcastic and quite mean and horrible. And it's not their fault. Obviously, it's all in my head, and the actions that are created by my mood swings. When you have these kind of days in prison, there's obviously again no support system there for you. There's nobody really going to come and give you a hug, and it's a very macho environment. So you don't have anyone to turn to, and especially in in the 2000s there was none of this kind of mental health awareness, and nobody really gave a shit about what you were going through. A lot of suicides and there's so much self-harm in prison. You see so many lads with cuts all across their forearms and worse, neck, things like this. Mental health in prison is a real poor it's a real poor subject. I remember I was one of the listeners, so I was trained by the Samaritans, and I did this at first in Portland, and I must admit it was part to fill my prison CV essentially. So I became a listener because it was another feather to my cap. And you get trained by the Samaritans to listen to other lads in prison and listen to their problems and things. And it's still exactly as confidential as it would be if you phoned the Samaritans themselves. But at least I can throw in that little bit of experience that I had. I managed to get a step up in Portland. I could handle it. So if I could reach down and help anybody else up as well, just listening to their problems and maybe, making them feel a little bit better about their lives, and I thought that might help them. You quickly hear some stories that, I can't ever repeat them, but they're the worst, of abuse and, suicide and things like this. And a lot of people would be properly mentally ill. They'd be down on the hospital wings, and there would be, schizophrenics and psychotic and, other forms of mental illness that, just for some reason they hadn't been scooped up at any point. And I don't think society is even, catching everybody before they fall into, these places. And when you speak to someone who is seriously mentally ill and has, say, schizophrenia, for example, and they're telling you in confidence that they know that the staff are all talking about them, and that they're paying people to come and kill them at night and things like this, and it's all the voices in their head, and it's their illness that are telling them these things. But it's very harrowing to have to listen to it, and there's nobody in the prison who's really trained to deal with it. The hospital wing staff have to be, coping with all sorts of stuff that they get, thrown their way, and they may be, I don't know the qualifications of the guys down there. I'm sure they do the best job they can, but it's not their problem. For an example, there should be something else in place to help these guys. But yeah, they end up on the hospital wing, and because the listener service is there, I imagine the staff sometimes, they obviously push the listener service, so we'd end up going down to listen to these mentally ill people talk to us through the flap in the door for hours on end, and it was of limited benefit because it was just the rantings of a mentally ill person. I don't think they felt too much comfort, whether I was there or not. Who knows? But there was very little help for the seriously mentally ill people in prison, and next to nothing for guys on the general wing. The guy who was in the cell next door to me when I was on one of my sentences in Exeter, when I was a gym orderly, hung himself and killed himself overnight one day. I didn't really know the lad that well. He'd come to the gym a bit. That's all I knew. We knew each other to sort of nod to each other in the morning, but I wasn't mates with him. I didn't even know his name, to be honest with you. And we were told early the next morning. The staff came and opened our door and just said, "Look, just a little heads up. So and so next door hung himself last night, and the family may want to come and speak to you as people who were kind of immediately around him. The family may want to come and speak to you, about his last days and things and how he was." And I was honest with the staff and just said, "Look, I didn't even speak to the guy. I don't know who he was." And he said that didn't really matter to the family. Sometimes they just wanted to hear that he was okay and had friends, basically. So I was ready to kind of nod in my head and say that we were best pals, and he was life and soul of the party, if that's what his family wanted to hear. But we never got asked to do that. But they just kind of give us the heads up. It's a bit weird, But anyway, he hung himself, and it's not unique in the prison system. Sometimes it's all too often. You'll find out that someone has done something to try and hurt themselves, either hung themselves or used a blade to cut themselves. And it wouldn't even, like I say, always be their wrists. It could be their neck or their their legs and things. And there's the block ends up getting littered with people on 24-hour bed watch, essentially, where the staff has to sit there at the door watching them. Most of the time when you're on a suicide watch, I think it's once every hour or once every half an hour, something like that maybe. But that's a long time for someone who's told them that they're suicidal. I remember when I was working on the resettlement wing, And if anybody got any bad news, say for example you got a knockback on your parole, or if a family member, even a breakup from a marriage or a relationship, and they'd keep you on the wing. So you weren't allowed to go out to your placement, or go out on the farm to be trusted. Then they'd keep you on the wing and lock you up, to make sure that you didn't do anything silly, anything rash or emotional. But they never actually came to speak to you about how are you feeling. No one ever came to speak to me as a man. There's no one in prison who's even to even say like a relationship manager in prison is ridiculous. But yeah, no one ever comes to speak to you as a member of staff to kind of ask you how you're feeling. And maybe there's a few good officers out there who might try and keep an eye out for that sort of thing. But nobody ever came to me to ask me how I was feeling, and if I was coping mentally with the time behind your door. Now, to give you an example, once you lock up on a Friday, say for example that Friday night you didn't have any association, they were short-staffed, so you lock up at 6 o'clock when you get your food. So it's 12 hours, 6 o'clock the next morning, then 8 o'clock obviously, sorry, when they open the door. So 14 hours you can go out, get your breakfast pack and everything, or go and get your little fried breakfast on a Saturday morning, and then you might be back behind your door again. You might only get out for an hour on a Saturday morning, and then maybe another couple of hours in the afternoon, and then by 3-4 o'clock you're back behind your door again, for another 4. So you're behind your door at 4 o'clock then, so through till 8 o'clock. So we're now talking about 16 hours behind your door on a Saturday night. This is a long time, if my maths is right. Yeah, no, it is. It definitely is. So yeah, this is a long time to be behind your door. Now, I remember 8 steps. 8 steps was how long it was between the cell door and the back wall of my cell. Because when I was bored, I used to sit there with my eyes shut, and I'd walk 8 steps, and I'd pace it out, and I'd see how close my nose would get to the back wall, and I'd try and do it so that when I opened my eyes, the wall was there right in front of me, and I'd obviously try and do it without walking into the wall with my eyes shut. But yeah, if you've ever seen a polar bear kind of sat there swaying backwards and forwards in a zoo, that's the kind of shit that you end up like in prison. Any little relationships suffer, and I know mine did when I was in prison, because you become ultra analytical of everything that's going on outside. So, say for example, your wife or partner sends you a letter saying that, or you have a phone call and she says, that she's going out at the weekend, and suddenly your mind can just start racing because you don't know what she's doing. Once she's had a couple of drinks, is someone going to start, trying to chat her up, or try it on with her, something like that, knowing that you're away for years. You know what lads are like. It used to tear me apart that the thought of something like that happening while I was in prison. My partner would say to me that she'd started car sharing with someone, or such and such had happened, and Tim had come over to help, and and then all you're fixated on is this Tim bastard, who's been round, and now he's trying to wheedle his way in, this sort of shit. So by the next time you have a phone call with them, could be 2 or 3 days later, straight away I'm just getting on saying, what's going on with this Tim then? And the phone call's more of a questioning and an aggressive nature, rather than being a nice getting in touch and reaching out to your family and friends. So yeah, my mental health in prison really suffered along those lines in that time. Just over analytical, over running things through in my mind. You just got far too much with no stimulation, far too much time to just mull things over with no stimulation, and it's it just wasn't positive in any way. And obviously everything around you is negative. It's not a great place to be. I know relationships suffer with family and things as well, because it's very difficult thinking that you may have let family and members down. And I know myself, quite often when you get arrested and stuff, you may be the breadwinner. That your money, your income was paying the bills. So I've not only have I left my partner with an empty house, but I've left them with mounting debt quickly around them as well. So it was always chaotic, and coming in and out of prison, coming into prison, I'd always end up losing about a stone in weight, just from stress and having to deal with things that even just phone bills. My phone bill, I had to ring Vodafone and get my my payments transferred over and shit, and that's a difficult process when sometimes you've got to wait in a queue for 40 minutes, to get through to someone at Vodafone, and that just eats up your money. So just all this added stress. So you've got your family thinking less of you. You've got the fact that you've got you can't pay all your bills. You've got the fact that you might be looking at a 2 or 3 year sentence with all these thugs and killers and fucking all the rest of the people you got there. And nobody ever comes and asks you how you're doing. Nobody comes and asks you how you're coping with it mentally. Now, you're in prison. Do you deserve help like that? Should that be part of your sentence? Should anybody really give a fuck? Well, now that I'm out and I'm a active member of society, surely my mental health is something that society should care about. Because if I can't cope with society, if I can't cope with the outside and dealing with life, then surely I become society's problem again. So, who knows? It'd be interesting to hear what people think. I just did this today because, like I say, I was coming off the back of a bad day yesterday, and it just made me think of when I was in prison. There was absolutely nothing. There was no mental health support at all. Nobody really cared. So I was just wondering what people's thoughts were, and what's everyone else's thoughts on dealing with mental health, and just trying to get by day to day, really. As always, I love all the comments. I read them all, and speak to you soon.